The strange little visitor asterisk. The night was cold, quiet, and wet. Rain tapped on the roof like soft fingers, and the wind whispered through the trees. Jacob sat alone in his small wooden home on the edge of the forest planet Alvaire 6, a cup of hot brew steamed in his hands, the only warmth in the empty room. He had lived here for almost 2 years, far from Earth and far from people. He liked it that way, quiet, simple, safe, no noise, no war, no broken hearts, just the sound of wind and time slowly passing. But then came the knock. It was soft, barely. There, Jacob froze. It was nearly midnight. Who would knock at this hour on a planet like this? He slowly stood, grabbing his old blaster from the wall just in case. He moved to the door, opened it carefully, and blinked in shock. Standing in the rain was a small alien child, maybe 6 or 7 years old. Her skin was pale purple, with tiny glowing dots across her cheeks. Her eyes were large, silver, and full of fear. She wore a tattered cloak soaked with rain, and her thin arms hugged herself tightly. She looked up at him, voice trembling, and asked, "Human, are you single?" Jacob stared at her, confused, thinking maybe he heard wrong. "What?" The little girl stepped closer, teeth chattering. "My mom. She's really kind. She needs a husband. You have to marry her." Jacob nearly dropped his blaster. He opened the door wider, trying to understand what was going on. "Kid, who are you? Where's your mother?" But the girl didn't answer. Her legs gave out and she collapsed on his doorstep. Jacob dropped to his knees, catching her before she hit the ground. Her skin was ice cold, her cloak torn. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. He carried her inside without another word, laying her on the couch near the heater. He grabbed a towel, wrapped her up, and checked for wounds. No major injuries, just exhaustion and hunger. She mumbled softly, half asleep now. "Don't let them take her. She's good. Please save my mom." Jacob sat beside her, staring at her strange features. She was definitely alien, but not from any species he'd seen before. And yet, something about her felt familiar, like a scared child from any world. Lost and alone, he fed her a warm drink and gave her a blanket. She curled up, tiny and tired, whispering, "You're nice. That's why I chose you." "Chose me for what?" Jacob asked, but she had already fallen asleep. That night, Jacob didn't sleep at all. He sat near the couch, watching over the child, wondering who she was, where she came from, and what kind of mother would send her daughter into a storm too. Find a stranger the next morning. Light peeked through the mist outside. The forest was quiet again, but Jacob's mind wasn't. He had 1,000 questions and one goal now: find her mother. Jacob woke up in his chair. His back ached, and the heater was still humming softly. The little alien girl was sleeping peacefully on the couch, her breathing steady, but her words from the night before haunted him. "You have to marry her. Please save my mom." The forest outside was covered in silver mist, the kind that blurred everything and made trees look like ghosts. Jacob wrapped himself in his jacket, packed a small bag, and checked his blaster one last time. Then he looked at the girl again. Still fast asleep. He didn't know her name, didn't know if this was a trap. But something inside him said this wasn't a trick. She had spoken with too much pain, too much fear. He had to find her mother. Jacob moved quickly, following her. Earlier directions near the glowing rocks. Beyond the whispering trees, it didn't make much sense, but it was all he had. Hours passed as he walked deeper into the forest. The air grew colder, the fog thicker. Strange sounds echoed through the trees, creatures calling, branches cracking. Once, he even thought he saw eyes watching from behind a rock. But when he turned, there was nothing. Then he saw it. A small circle of glowing stones, smooth, blue, and pulsing with soft light, just like the girl said. Behind the circle was a steep hill covered in long moss, and near the base of it a dark cave entrance almost hidden. Jacob stepped closer. Slowly, carefully, he heard something. A voice, soft and low, humming a strange tune. It wasn't human. But it wasn't frightening either. It sounded like a lullaby. He moved quietly toward the cave, every step slow, blaster in hand. At the entrance, he paused. Inside, near a flickering fire, sat a tall alien woman. Her body was curved, strong yet tired, skin the same pale lavender as the girl's. Her long silver hair was tied back with vines, and one of her arms was wrapped in bloody cloth. She was wounded, and yet she sat still, humming softly as if the world outside didn't exist. Then she noticed him. In a second, she stood, her eyes wide, her hand reaching for a sharp stick beside her. Jacob raised his free hand. "Wait, I'm not here to hurt you, human." She hissed. "Stay back. I found your daughter," he said quickly. "She came to my home last night, in the rain, said you were in trouble." Her eyes flickered with something: hope, fear, disbelief. She didn't lower the stick. But her grip weakened. "She's alive," she whispered, voice cracking. "Yes," Jacob said, slowly lowering his blaster. "She's safe. Sleeping now." The woman's knees gave out, and she dropped to the floor. Covering her face with her hands, a soft sob escaped her lips. "I thought they took her. I thought she was gone." Jacob stepped inside the cave, crouching near the fire. She risked everything to find help. The woman looked at him, tired eyes full of confusion, and she found a human. She asked, "Why would she trust you?" "I don't know," Jacob admitted, "but she said you were kind and that you needed help." The woman gave a weak smile, her eyes glistening. She always sees good in others, even when there's danger. "What's your name?" "Jacob asked Soraya," she said softly, "and my daughter's name is Leary." Soraya explained how they had escaped from slave ships months ago, hiding in the forest, eating roots, drinking rain. Always running, her wound was from a trap. She had tried to set, hoping to catch food, but instead it caught her. "I told Leary to stay hidden if something happened to me," Soraya said. "I didn't think she'd go looking for strangers." Jacob stood up. "She's not alone anymore. Come with me. You're both safer at my place." Soraya hesitated, then slowly nodded. But when she tried to stand, she winced in pain. Her leg had stiffened badly, and she could barely walk without a word. Jacob bent down and gently lifted her into his arms. She gasped in surprise. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," Jacob interrupted. "Because your daughter asked me to." And so, through mist and forest, he carried Soraya home. Her head rested against his shoulder, her body trembling, but she did not pull away as they neared the edge of the trees. Soraya whispered, "She said you had kind eyes." Jacob looked down at her. "I'm not used to being seen like that anymore." Soraya didn't answer, but her grip around his neck tightened slightly, and for the first time, Jacob felt something more than duty in his heart. He felt a bond beginning to grow strange, unexpected, and quietly powerful. Rain poured softly outside, as if the sky itself was afraid to disturb the silence in Jacob's cabin. Inside, the heater hummed. The room smelled of damp clothes, herbs, and fresh soup. Soraya sat on the couch, her injured leg propped up on a cushion, a blanket draped around her shoulders. Leary, the little alien girl, curled up next to her mother, holding her hand tightly. She hadn't let go since they arrived, not even for a second. Her silver eyes sparkled with joy and relief, but also worry, like she was afraid this piece would vanish if she blinked. Jacob sat on the floor nearby, spooning soup into a wooden bowl. He passed it to Soraya, who hesitated, then took it with a quiet thank you. She sipped carefully, then looked at him. "You live alone," she said softly. Jacob nodded. "By choice." "Strange," she murmured. Most humans I met. They take, then leave. Jacob looked at her. I've done enough leaving. Soraya didn't ask more. But something in her eyes said she understood too well. She stared into the fire. Her hand stroking Leary's hair gently. Her voice came out low, almost too soft to hear. I used to be a guardian. Before the fall of our planet, Jacob turned to her, curious but silent. Letting her speak in her own time, we were proud, Soraya said. Our cities floated in the sky. Our children were safe. Our stars were ours. She paused, but we trusted the wrong species. They promised peace. They came as traders, then turned into slavers. Jacob's hand tightened around his cup. He had heard stories like this too many. Too late. They took everything, she continued. Our skies burned, our temples fell. I lost my bondmate in the first attack. And then, I ran. With Leary, we were hunted across systems, sold twice, escaped twice. Leary lowered her head, whispering. I didn't like the cages. They were cold, and they yelled a lot. Jacob felt something heavy inside his chest. The girl was too young to even understand the pain she'd seen. Yet here she was, speaking of cages like someone might talk about a bad dream. After our last escape, Soraya said, I promised we'd never be caught again. We hid in the forest. I stole food. I set traps. I taught Leary to stay hidden. She looked at Jacob now, her voice firm. But I never told her to go looking for a human. Leary spoke up, her tone innocent but strong. I was scared you were going to die. So I looked for someone with kind eyes. Soraya closed her eyes, as if the child's words cut her deeper than anything else. Jacob stood and walked to the window. He stared out at the mist and trees. Then said quietly, You trusted me even. After everything you went through. I didn't, Soraya said. She did. There was a pause, only filled by the crackle of the fire. But I'm beginning to. She added softly. Jacob turned, his eyes meeting hers. I don't have much. No fancy machines, no ship, no power. Soraya smiled faintly. You have something rarer than all that. What's that? He asked. Stillness, she said. A heart that doesn't want anything in return. Leary suddenly sat up, brightening the room with her voice. Mama, he's good, right? He should stay with us forever. Soraya touched her daughter's cheek. We don't ask for forever. Little star, just one safe night at a time. Jacob felt the words sit heavy in the air, soft but sharp. Gentle but painful. Later that night, after Leary had fallen asleep wrapped in warm blankets, Jacob stepped outside to gather more firewood. Soraya joined him slowly, leaning on a cane he had carved for her earlier. She watched the stars, her voice distant. We believed humans were monsters, and we believed aliens were liars. Jacob replied, dropping logs into the basket. Funny how wrong both of us were, she said with a tired smile. He looked at her for a long moment, then asked, So, do I have kind eyes? Soraya didn't answer right away. Then, very slowly, she nodded. Yes, she said, but I'm not ready to trust them completely. That's all right, Jacob replied. I'm not asking you to. They stood in silence, not as strangers. Not yet as family, but something new, something forming. Behind them, from the open window, a small, sleepy voice whispered, Did he say yes, Mama? Will he be my new dad? Jacob froze. Soraya's eyes met his, wide with surprise, but not fear. Jacob gave a soft laugh, running a hand through his hair. We might need to have a serious talk. Soraya looked up at the stars again. And this time, she laughed too, a small broken sound that carried something healing in it. Asterisk morning lights spilled across the wooden floor like golden dust. Inside the cabin, the silence was peaceful. To peaceful, Soraya stirred gently. Still wrapped in the warmth of sleep, Leary was curled beside her like a kitten, safe and smiling. Jacob sat near the window, sipping tea, listening to birds chirping in the forest, but his gut felt tight, like something invisible had shifted. He didn't have to wait long to know why. The sound of engines came first low and rumbling, unnatural in the quiet forest. Then came the soft crunch of boots on dirt. Jacob stood quickly, his hand moving to the blaster on the wall. He peeked through the curtain. 3 figures approached. Armored in black, helmets gleaming, weapons slung across their shoulders. Their uniforms didn't belong to any official force. These were bounty hunters. Jacob's blood turned cold. He rushed to the couch, touching Saraya's arm. "Wake up. Now we have company." Her eyes opened fast. Trained by years of danger, she sat up quickly, pulling Leary close. "Who is it?" "Hunters," Jacob said, armed, moving straight toward us. Saraya's face went pale. Her grip on Leary tightened. "They found us." Jacob nodded. "Hide in the cellar." "Now?" "No." Saraya whispered. "They'll scan for heat. They'll find us anyway." Jacob looked at them, then at his cabin, and made a decision. "Then let me buy you time." He stepped outside as the hunters came into view. Rain had started falling again, light but cold. The leader of the trio stepped forward. Visor down, voice metallic. "Morning, citizen. We're looking for a pair of escaped aliens female. One child, dangerous fugitives." Jacob gave a tight smile. "Don't see many people around here. Just trees and squirrels." The second bounty hunter raised a scanner. Its screen flickered and beeped. "There's a warm signature inside." Jacob raised his blaster. "Then I guess you're not just sightseeing." In a second, the forest exploded with tension. The first hunter aimed his weapon. "Lower the gun, human." "We have no interest in killing you, unless you're protecting them." "I am," Jacob said firmly. "And you'll have to go through me." Inside, Saraya knelt beside the fire pit. Quietly lifting a hidden hatch, Leary's hands trembled. "Will he be okay, Mama?" Saraya kissed her forehead. "He's stronger than he looks, but we must be ready too." Outside, Jacob fired first. His shot hit the ground near their feet, a warning. But the response was sharp, and deadly laser bolts cut through trees, burning bark and setting branches aflame. Jacob rolled behind a tree, heart pounding. This wasn't the first time he'd faced men with guns, but it might be the last. Suddenly, Saraya burst through the door, staff in hand. Her eyes burned like fire. Her body moved with trained grace. She leaped forward, slamming one hunter with a strike that sent him crashing to the ground. Leary screamed inside, hiding behind the couch. The remaining 2 attackers reacted fast. One shot grazed Saraya's arm. But she didn't stop. Jacob popped out from cover. Firing again, his bolt hit the leg of the second attacker. Dropping him, the leader raised his weapon toward Saraya, but Jacob tackled him just in time. They rolled on the muddy ground, fists flying. Saraya spun, kicking the weapon out of reach. She stood over the hunter, breathing hard, staff ready to strike again. "Leave," she said coldly, "or I stop showing mercy." The hunter looked up, face bloody, and finally, he nodded. "This isn't over." He growled. "Maybe not." Jacob said, helping Saraya up. "But you're done for today." The remaining attackers limped away into the trees, one dragging the other. Their ship engines roared in the distance moments later. And then silence. Jacob stood there, breathing hard, hands muddy and shaking. Saraya leaned against him, bleeding but still standing tall. Inside, Leary ran out and hugged them both tightly. "I was scared," she whispered. Jacob crouched down and held her close. "Me too," he said quietly. "But you're safe now." That night, no one slept. Saraya cleaned her wound while Jacob reinforced the windows. He added traps outside, rearmed old sensors, and sent an encrypted message to a contact from his past. Someone who owed him a favor. "We can't stay here," Saraya said at last. "They'll return with more." Jacob looked at her, eyes tired but steady. Then we don't hide. We prepare. We protect this place because it's yours now too. Soraya blinked. Why would you risk all this for us? Jacob looked at Leary, already asleep on the couch again, her tiny hand clutching a piece of bread. Then back at Soraya, because I'm tired of being alone, and because I think I was waiting for someone to need me again. Soraya didn't reply, but for the first time since they met. She didn't look like a refugee or a warrior. She looked like a woman who had just found something she lost a long time ago: hope. The forest was quiet again, but it was the kind of quiet that felt heavy. Like something was watching, waiting. Jacob didn't sleep for 3 nights straight. His hands were blistered from building traps, fixing fences, hiding heat signatures. Soraya helped where she could, limping on her injured leg, but still graceful and fast. She didn't complain, not once. Neither did Jacob. Not even when his arms burned or his tools broke. They didn't talk much. But something had changed since the fight. There was trust. Now, not complete, not perfect, but real. Leary followed Jacob everywhere, asking questions, drawing stars on his floor with chalk, and calling him Dad like she had always done it. At first, Jacob corrected her, awkwardly, gently, but over time, the word didn't feel so strange anymore. One morning, while he was fixing the roof, Leary climbed up beside him, sat down, cross-legged, and asked, "If we're your family now, does that make you my forever human?" Jacob chuckled. "Is that what you want?" She nodded seriously. "Yes, because Mom smiles more when you're around. And she eats all her soup, not just half." He didn't answer, just handed her a nail and showed her where to place it. She grinned and did exactly what he taught her. That night, over dinner, Jacob asked Soraya, "Do you believe in starting over?" She looked at him across the table, shadows flickering on her face. "Not before," she said. "But I think I'm starting to." He nodded slowly. "I've been thinking. You don't have to run anymore. I've got some old contacts, people who protect refugee families. They owe me favors. And they've got places where no one asks questions." Soraya looked down at her bowl. "What would that mean for us?" Jacob hesitated. "It would mean I register you and Leary as part of my household. Full guardianship, under Earth law, like adoption." She asked softly. "More like family," he replied, watching her carefully. "And yes, technically, I'd be listed as your mate." Soraya's eyes met his, wide with something between fear and disbelief. "Why would you do that?" "Because I'm not letting bounty hunters take either of you," he said. "And because I think Leary already made that decision for both of us." They both turned to look at the girl, who was snoring softly beside the fireplace, wrapped in a thick blanket and holding a stuffed creature Jacob carved for her from bark. Soraya's voice dropped, barely above a whisper. "I was never supposed to fall in love again." Jacob didn't answer, but he reached across the table and gently touched her hand. Her fingers flinched at first, but then relaxed. The next morning, Jacob sent the encrypted message. One word: bind. It was an old CODA request for unofficial registry protection, hidden inside Earth's outdated alliance system. Hours later, a reply came, confirmed. Safe house granted, location locked, registry masked. Expect courier within 7 days. He showed the message to Soraya. She stared at it for a long time, her lips trembling. "It's real," she said. "We'll be safe, not just safe." Jacob replied, "Home." That night, they held a small dinner under the stars. Jacob cooked fish over the fire, and Leary danced barefoot in the grass. Pretending to be a queen from her homeworld, Soraya wore a cloak Jacob had mended with his own hands, lined with soft feathers and stitched flowers. She laughed that night, Treely laughed for the first time in what felt like a lifetime. Jacob sat beside her, watching the stars. "So, how does this work?" Kay asked. Do we do vows or rituals or something? Soraya looked at him with that gentle, unreadable gaze of hers. Our kind bonds through intent. We speak the truth with no lies in our heart. That's all. Jacob nodded, then said, Then my truth is simple. I want to protect you, Reyes. Leery, and never be alone again. Soraya looked at the fire, then at her daughter, then back at him. My truth is, I was afraid to hope again, but now, I'm ready to try. They didn't kiss, they didn't hug, but in that moment, something deeper than a contract passed between them. Leery twirled near the fire and shouted, Mama said yes. That means we're married now. It blinked. That's not exactly how it works, but Soraya smiled. Actually, it kind of is. Jacob couldn't help but laugh. And for the first time in many years, he felt like he belonged to something more than survival. He belonged to a family. Jacob never imagined his quiet forest home would host a wedding. Especially not one involving an alien mother and her bold little daughter. But somehow, here he was, standing outside his cabin, wearing a clean shirt. Leery picked out a flower crown made by Soraya, and nerves pounding in his chest like a war drum. There were no priests, no guests from Earth, no cameras or rings. But there was Soraya, and that was more than enough. She stepped into the sunlight, wearing a dress made from moss silk and silver leaf thread. It shimmered softly with every step. Her hair was tied up with glowing vines, her wounded arm now fully healed. Her eyes locked with Jacob's hand for a moment. The forest itself seemed to stop moving. Leery danced in circles around them, tossing petals from alien flowers she'd picked that morning. Everyone's watching, she whispered with excitement. The trees, the birds, the stars, they all know Mama's getting married today. Jacob smiled nervously. Well, they're the quietest wedding guests I've ever had. Soraya tilted her head. Amused, you're trembling, human. I'm standing in front of the most beautiful woman in the galaxy. Jacob said, So yeah, a little. She laughed, soft and clear. I was once trained to fight dragons made of plasma. But I've never done anything scarier than this. Jacob stepped forward, gently taking her hands in his. Then we'll be scared together. They stood in a small clearing behind the house. Surrounded by glowing lanterns, Leery hung from tree branches. She insisted they needed magic light, even if it was daytime. Jacob cleared his throat. I guess I'm supposed to say something. Soraya nodded, eyes calm but full of feeling. I never thought I'd have a family again, Jacob began. His voice quiet but steady. I lost everything once, my home, my people, even myself. But then, a little girl knocked on my door in the rain and asked if I was single. Leery giggled in the background. You still are, but not for long. Jacob chuckled, then looked back at Soraya. You gave me purpose again. You made my quiet life full, and I don't care what species you are, your heart. It's more human than most humans I've met. Soraya squeezed his hands, her voice soft. I was trained to fight, to run, to protect. But never to love again. I thought that part of me was dead, but then you carried me through the mist. Not because you had to, but because you wanted to. She took a breath. You reminded me that I'm not just a survivor. I'm still a woman, still a mother, still worthy of love. Leery suddenly stepped between them, holding a small stone wrapped in twine. This is your bond token, she said proudly. It's not shiny, but I carved both your names on it. Jacob took the stone gently, seeing the tiny letters scratched into the surface. Crude but clear. He looked at Soraya, and together they tied the twine around their joined hands. I guess that makes it official, Jacob whispered. Not yet, Leery said, hands on her hips. Now you have to kiss her. That's how it works. I read it in an old Earth book. Jacob looked at Soraya for permission. She smiled shyly, then nodded once. The kiss was short, sweet, and full of silent promises. And when it ended, Leery shouted, Now we're safe. Now you can't leave." They laughed, all three of them, and for the first time in years. Laughter didn't feel stolen, it felt real. Later, as the sun dipped below the trees, Jacob cooked a meal from earth vegetables and Sariah's alien herbs. They ate by firelight, sharing stories, dreams, and soft touches that spoke louder than words, but in the darkness beyond the trees. Something stirred. A shadow moved between branches, cloaked in black armor and silent steps, watching the celebration from afar. Eyes behind the visor scanned the couple, then focused on the child. A voice crackled quietly through the hidden comm. "Target confirmed. Family unit formed. Prepare strike coordinates. Back at the cabin." Jacob held Sariah's hand as they watched Leary chase fireflies, oblivious to the danger drawing near. "I want this to last," he said. Sariah leaned against his shoulder. "Then we'll fight to protect it." The stars blinked above, peaceful for now, but something was coming. And love alone wouldn't be enough to stop it. The stars above the forest sparkled like diamonds on black silk. The air was still, too still. Jacob sat on the porch, Sariah beside him. Leary curled up in a blanket between them, asleep and peaceful. But Jacob's heart wasn't calm. The night before, he spotted something a shimmer in the trees, too smooth to be natural, too quiet to be wild. His instincts whispered danger, and Sariah's did too. "They're coming," she had said simply. Not in fear, but in truth. Now, as the wind picked up, Jacob stood, placing his hand on the old blaster he had cleaned 3 times in the past hour. Sariah rose beside him, holding the staff he carved for her from hardened root steel. Her stance steady, her jaw set like stone. They had prepared for this. The forest was full of traps, sensors, and hidden tripwires. Jacob had even buried shock charges near the tree line, just in case. But still he knew this wouldn't be enough. These were not common bounty hunters. These were professionals. Elite trackers who only came when the price was high, and Sariah and Leary were worth a fortune to the wrong people. Then, the silence shattered. A flash of light cut through the sky, a stealth drop pod. Crashing beyond the ridge, the forest glowed red for a second, then went dark again. Jacob turned to Sariah. "Take Leary. Go into the bunker." Sariah shook her head. "We fight together." "No," Jacob said, his voice firm. "She needs you more than I do. If we fall, she needs a chance to live." But Sariah grabbed his arm, her eyes burning with something fierce and ancient. "We fight together," she repeated. "You gave us a home, a bond. I won't leave you now." Jacob hesitated, then nodded. "Then let's show them what love looks like." They moved quickly, setting final traps, lighting perimeter beacons, locking Leary in the reinforced cellar with a communicator. Leary cried, banging on the walls, "Don't leave me alone." "You're not alone," Jacob said through the mic. "You're strong, like your mother, like us. We'll come back for you." Then they stepped outside. The shadows moved fast. Armored figures with glowing eyes and silent weapons. Jacob fired. The first shot, bright and loud, a scream followed as one of the invaders hit a hidden trap, vines pulling him into the air like a rag doll. Sariah leaped into battle, her staff spinning, striking, her movements like wind and thunder. Jacob stayed close, firing steady shots covering her back, but they were outnumbered. One attacker landed a hit, burning Jacob's side. He fell, groaning, but pulled himself up again. His mind screamed, but his heart burned stronger. Sariah cried out too, taking a stun blast to the shoulder. She stumbled, fell to her knees. A tall soldier moved in, blade raised. Jacob roared and tackled the man, wrestling the blade from his hand, punching until the mask cracked and blood spilled. Behind them, another attacker moved toward the cellar toward Leary. Sariah saw it, eyes wide with horror. "No?" she shouted, dragging herself forward, but she was too far. Then boom, the ground exploded. Smoke filled the air. When it cleared, the attacker was gone, and from the tree line. Voices rose, resistance fighters, humans and aliens both. Friends. Jacob once fought beside. They poured into the clearing. Armed and ready, the tide had turned. The battle raged for minutes more. Then silence fell. Only the sound of heavy breathing, sparks, and bodies collapsing echoed through the trees. Jacob lay on the ground, bleeding, Soraya beside him. Leary burst out of the cellar and ran to them, crying, "Don't go, please." Jacob smiled weakly. "I told you. I'd come back." Soraya cradled his face, tears falling. "You held us together. Even when I couldn't believe, you believed when it mattered." Jacob whispered, "That's enough." The resistance medics moved in, tending to wounds. Leary held both their hands tightly, not letting go, even as they were lifted onto it. Stretchers. Days passed. Jacob woke in a clean bed, bandaged and weak, but alive. Soraya sat beside him, her arm in a sling, her eyes full of emotion. Leary was asleep on the floor, curled up like always. "We're registered now," Soraya said softly, "under your name. Fully protected by the resistance. No one can take us anymore." Jacob nodded slowly. "Good, because I'm not letting anyone try again." Soraya leaned down, kissed his forehead gently. "You're our home now." Jacob closed his eyes and whispered, "So are you." Outside, the forest healed, and the wind returned, but inside that small cabin, 3 hearts beat as one, not bound by blood, but by something stronger: love, chosen freely. Love stronger than fear.